From the latest on Caribbean cruises to kosher safaris, pilgrimages to Jewish Eastern Europe, and award-winning wines and international cuisine in sun-drenched Tel Aviv. Sit back and enjoy the trip with the travel edition of the Jerusalem Post podcast.
Holidays again.
It's fantastic. It's been a while since we were away.
This is the first time in 6 months we've actually made it on a plane together.
It was very nice.
Yeah.
Ryanair. It's the first time we've flown with Ryanair for the podcast. Absolutely fine. Great, lovely journey. Arrived on time. A little bit warm.
Very warm.
You had the sun on your side.
There was no sun. That's what worried me. There was no sun, but my window was hot.
Anyway, we have arrived in Poland.
And within 30 minutes of arriving at our hotel, I'm in a brewery.
It's kind of a brewery, but...
Well, I was told it was a brewery. I saw Old Brewery.
You're just an old alcoholic. We'll find out more about that in a minute. What we're going to be doing in this podcast is talking all about the beautiful city, Poznan. Mark and I have been here before ourselves in our pre-podcast days, but for you, dear listener, it's your first visit along with us.
If you listen to our Bucharest podcast, you'll remember we were also in Bucharest and don't remember much about that. So we went round and saw it properly. So we're going to see Poznan properly this time.
I thought you meant because you were in an alcoholic daze the last time. But
no, I did. And we were in a pretty alcoholic daze last time we were in Poznan too.
Anyway, we've got our first guest waiting, so why don't we do what we normally do at this point in the podcast? Quick quiz question, and then we'll talk to our guest.
Very simple quiz question. Poznan sits on which river?
The answer at the end of the podcast.
This is the Jerusalem Post Podcast Travel Edition. Find us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at MarkDavidPod or mail us at markdavidpod@gmail.com. Welcome back to the brewery.
It's great. No alcohol thus far, but it isn't really a brewery.
Maybe it was once.
We'll find out. Our guest is Marta Kapsch, and she's going to introduce herself, tell us all about yourself and where we are right now.
Sure. Welcome, guys. Welcome to Old Brewery, the most unique shopping center in Poznan, but I would say in Poland, probably. My name is Marta. I'm a PR manager working for Stary Browar, and I will tell you a few words about the history of this place and why we say it's unique.
Walking around here, there's brickwork, there's steel work, there's wood, there's lots of industrial materials. It's a really, really attractive building. Tell us about the history of the building, how it came to be like it is today.
So at the moment we are at the courtyard, so in the very heart of Old Brewery, Stary Browar in Polish. This is the place where historically the actual brewery was located. So behind you there are the historical buildings that were refreshed, revitalized in 2003 when Grażyna Kulczyk, the first owner and the creator of the place, decided to build a shopping center in the very heart of Poznan. And the first wing, called Atrium, opened almost 20 years ago. So we have very important birthday this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And what is unique about how the place looks is, as you said, it combines the elements inspired by industrial architecture of the 19th century, so inspired by the original buildings of the brewery, but also lots of unique modern forms are also incorporated here. But I think altogether, they create like this timeless, very interesting architecture that was awarded with so many important prizes, both in architecture world and the retail world.
You've got close to 200 stores here, top names that people will be familiar with, also places that maybe are local and are perhaps less expensive. But you've also got the art, the performances. How much do you promote this place as being for art, and how much do the shops that are here like that or not like that? Because if you're pushing the art, maybe people are going to spend less money in the shops.
We do both. We work as the actual shopping center, so our main activity is to promote the shopping offer because that's the main part of business here. But then we have lots of these activities, events, as you said. We have an art gallery with exhibitions and the beautiful park that is also the part of our complex where we have, especially in the summer, different activities, concerts, sport events. So I would say really it's both, but I think all the brands that come here to work there, they appreciate that it's the place for both, and the way we combine it. So I think it all works together, and that's why this place is so unique, because people come here to see the exhibition, but then they go shopping, and vice versa. They would come to shop, and they see, oh, there's art gallery nearby, so let's go and visit an exhibition. All works together perfectly.
You've been to the shops, you've been to the galleries. Time for some food. We're in this really attractive circular area, a lot of glass. Tell us a little bit more about what you can eat, where you can eat, and what's out there behind the glass.
We are at the courtyard where the restaurants with the world cuisine are located. So we have Korean cuisine, we have Japanese cuisine with robata grill. So it's very unique offer that you can only eat here in Stary Browar. There is a whiskey in the jar with amazing steaks.
We like the sound of the whiskey in the jar. As you can probably tell, we like our alcohol.
Yeah, I've heard about some
We're British, what can we do?
So I encourage you to try the jarred part of of the title. Yeah, there's Dolce Vita with Italian cuisine, Veranda, which is one of the most popular restaurants in Poznan with beautiful interior. We also have like traditional fast food zone, so the food court in Atrium, and we are about to open in spring the very new destination. It will be food hall with different concepts, with inspired by street food and slow food. So yeah, the culinary offer is very important part of why and the reason for people to come around.
We're a travel podcast coming out of Israel. Our listeners are international, North America, across Europe, the English-speaking world. And yet the local tourism office said, you must come here and see this place. How much are you looking for international tourists, and how much are foreigners coming into this, what is truly a stunning centre, a stunning place that is this mix of shopping and art?
Well, I think, of course, our regular clients are very dear to us, but we invite and welcome the tourists from abroad. And this is, as you said, this is a place, not many shopping centers can say that they work and function as a tourist attraction. And that's the case with Stary Browar. So I very much encourage people visiting Poznan to take time and come here. You can combine lots of activities here and also learn a little bit about the history with some materials we have available for visitors, or you can even book a guided tour. Again, very unique thing for a shopping center.
How do people find out more details about Stary Browar?
I invite you to visit our website, starybrovar.com. It's hard to spell probably, but I think it's easy to Google with on Wikipedia or Google Maps. We are in the very center of Poznan. I think very easily you will find the link to our website. And there is a little bit about the history of the place, the list of shops, and of course the calendar with all the events we have.
And while we've been here, Mark and I have been busy filming and photographing, and we'll get some professional photographs as well, far better than our own. And you'll be able to see them all on our social media at Mark David Pod. Thank you so much indeed for your time.
Thank you, and I hope I will see you, listeners, dear listeners, here in Stary Browar in Poznan.
We are in the Museum of Musical Instruments, which is a branch of the National Museum in Poznan. And I am Patryk Frankowski, and I am the head of this branch.
We've come into this room. There are a number of big windows overlooking the square and its colourful buildings. But in this room, there are lots of wooden boxes. What do these boxes do?
Here we have mechanical instruments, mainly different types of barrel organs, music boxes, sometimes even mechanical accordions, etc. For example, see how sounds this 100-year-old music box.
I feel like I should be stood on top of the box, dressed in a tutu, spinning round, but I'm not sure I'll be allowed to stay in the museum for long if I do that.
We have here also working barrel organ. This instrument is a little bit younger. It has around 8 years old. It was built in a Polish city Łódź in a factory of organ builders. If you want, you can try even it by yourself.
Ooh. It's not breakable, is it?
It looks significantly older than 80 years. It looks as though it's 300 years old.
You can roll it, but quite steady in tempo. So you can try it.
Towards me or away from me?
Towards me.
Towards you. The Israeli Philharmonic, are you ready? So having massacred the barrel organ downstairs, what else is there to see in the museum?
We have instruments from all the world, from the India. From different part of the Europe, but the main collection is instruments of the so-called artistic music, classical music. Usually we have 2 floors in a historical or like a periodic setup from the late Middle Ages to the 20th century, and you can see all the instruments and ensembles that were the main ensembles that played in this time. So the polychoral music, the Baroque ensemble, 19th century orchestras, even a lot of forms of the grand pianos and the solo music. The highlights of the collections are our Polish-made violins in the 18th century, but also violin made by the Italian makers, very famous Italian makers like Guadagnini, for example, or Guarneri del Gesso. But we have also interesting other instruments like the harpsichord made by Burkhard Schrödi, one of the most illustrious English makers. So there is a lot to see.
I think my favourite instrument walking around was the glass harmonica, at least until you told me that it can send you mad from the lead that's on the cover of it. Do you have a favourite instrument here?
Oh, my favorite instrument, I think it's one of the oldest brass instruments here. Interesting instrument made from the bronze and used during the prosecution to herald the sentence. So it's really interesting. It's one of the oldest brass instruments. I play brass instruments, so it is why it is my favorite.
From the most interesting bagpipes that you will ever see through to an actual instrument played by Mozart. This is a fascinating collection. Where can people find out more? Do you have a website?
We have a website. We will have a new website because the old one is not enough for today's standards. We are preparing this website. On the website there will be virtual tour around museum.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for guiding us. Folks, come and take a look when you're in Poznan.
Please come to us, and thank you very much for visiting us.
Hi, my name is Michał Błaszczyński. I'm a curator of Applied Arts Museum in Poznan in Poland, and we are in a historical building, in a castle, which holds the Applied Art Museum.
What is applied arts?
Those are unique objects with a artistic taste made for people to use. It's your cup, it's your grandmother's tissue, but those are also antique furnitures, but also items used for religion at home or in your temples, synagogues, churches, and so on and so on.
In other words, it's art on something that has practical use.
You can say that, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the collection.
We collect applied arts from Europe, but with a great section of Far East art, since medieval period till today, so till the design.
How is the museum laid out for visitors?
We tell the story of items, we tell the story about people that were using them from the medieval period, so in a chronological way, with some special stops for showing you the way that people collected items, collected art. And the place that we are now standing in is the story of the beginning of museum collections in Poznan. In every room you'll find some few items or one that is explained, that the story of it is written, you can read it.
In various parts of the museum, we've seen items of Judaica. We've now come to a specific collection. We can see the cover of a Torah scroll. We can see the breastplate and the pointer that would be used to read the Torah. There's also a menorah that would be used, or a Chanukiah that would be used on the Hanukkah festival, and also Havdalah candles, tefillin covers, and so on. What's the story of this collection?
Well, the story is extremely interesting. Those items come from great Poland synagogues, from Międzychód, Międzyrzecz till Słupca, so like 300 kilometers. They came to the museum in 1900, 1910, so the beginning of the 20th century and after the Second World War. It's extremely interesting that Jewish communities in the cities in Great Poland, in Poznan also, decided to donate their items, not used in the synagogues, to create the museum. So they wanted that tell our story, that we are part of this region. So those are the donations, or not only donations, they were sold and donated. That's this part. The other part that is here next to us, this is a nearly complete set of items from the synagogue buried in the beginning of the Second World War in 1959 in the synagogue in Słupca. And it was restored, recovered or discovered in the 1966 and brought to the museum. They knew that something is happening, something bad is going to happen, and they wanted to store, treasure those items made of silver.
Great Poland, for our listeners, is Wielkopolska, which is the region we are in at the moment where Poznan is situated.
In your collection down at the bottom is a fascinating looking hat. It almost looks like it's a Mongol Genghis Khan hat, but made from cloth rather than metal.
Well, it's silver, it's gilded, it's textile, but it's covered with small pieces of metal. It is used as a cedar cap.
How do visitors come to the museum? How do they find out about the museum?
We have our website, of course. We can easily find by typing Muzeum Narodowe or National Museum in Poznań. The website is mnp.art.pl.
This is the Jerusalem Post podcast travel edition with Mark Gordon and David Harris. So, Mark always makes fun of me for being scared of heights. But it turns out that Mark doesn't like doing towers. Now, I am doing something that is extremely unusual. I'm very lucky to be going to one of Poland's most famous tourist sites, monuments, and seeing it from the inside, which is not something that members of the public get to do. Where I am right now is inside the old town hall, right in the middle of the city square. And you may have seen videos or pictures, or if you've been here, you may have seen the goats. So a couple of times a day on the hour, 2 white goats that have around right now, around their necks, the blue and yellow ribbons, presumably to show solidarity and sympathy with the people of Ukraine. They pop out as the bells ring, they do a little jig, they fight one another, and then they come back inside. And the reason that I'm in here, and it is a very, very tight area, is because we're going to hear the mechanism from the inside. We've got another few seconds until the hour, and then hopefully you will hear something that very, very, very few people get to hear. So the goats are now out there being displayed. In the distance, you can hear music. And now they begin their fight. Their horns are locking. The horns are painted in a brown gold. They go up, rear, back, and drop towards one another. They're doing it now for the 4th time, maybe. Up they go and down, and they lock horns. So far, it's a draw. Neither goat is winning. They've been doing this for many, many years, and so far, neither of them is victorious. They've done their bit. I hear bells ringing in the distance, and they're now reversing back into their home until their next performance in 3 hours' time. Twice a day, I believe, you can see these goats. You'll be seeing it from down in the main city square, which is a magnificent place to visit. I've just been very fortunate. And if you want to see the video of all of this from behind the scenes, go to our social media at Mark David Pod. The person who is looking after us beautifully and also responsible for promoting tourism to Poznan is Wojtek Mania. He's the one who arranged for me to go and see the goats, and you also know the story of the goats. So it's a 30th anniversary for this particular pair of goats yesterday, right?
Yes, it's true. These are mechanical goats. For a few months now they have brand new top-notch electronic device that can steer the goats, but their history is much richer and longer than this one. It all started in 1551 and 16th century, when Poznan was really a wealthy town, and a new town hall was designed by Italian architect Gian Battista di Quadro. And also a so-called gimmick mechanism, goats were commissioned for the city. It means 2 things: that city could afford it. The second thing, why? Well, this kind of device has regulated time in medieval or late medieval Renaissance towns when hardly anyone could afford a watch or clock. Originally, they were intended, we know it from the city archives, to give their show each hour. Then they disappeared. The war came, crises came, and famine and this kind of events. So they disappeared for a long period of time. They reappeared again in 1913, just before the First World War, when Poznan was under German rule, German occupation, and Germans or Prussians, they painted goats. These are 2 of them. They painted goats, one in black and white stripes and the second one in white and red stripe. German or Prussian and Polish colors. So they were hitting their heads. So a lot of people interpreted it in the local media of the time, we are talking about 1913, that this is some kind of nearly a provocation from the German side. They returned for good again in 1945, and they were renovated a few times. You can see the original mechanism in the collection of the National Museum in Poznan. These are the goats from the 1913, or each day at 12 on the Town Hall Tower You cannot miss it. It's quite humble, but kids do a lot of atmosphere around it. They are counting because they are butting their head 12 times. It's something that you really must see to have this conviction that you really had a real Poznan experience.
Are there any legends connected with the goats?
Yes, at least one, and in some variants. The legend goes that there was a young cook or chef, and he was asked to prepare a feast for a king or some nobleman of Poznan, some important people. So he decided that what could be better than game, wild animals, meat, something really prestigious and expensive. But he was so stressed about this commission, though he burned the meat. And he was thinking for a while, what can substitute this meat? And he thought about goats as something that resembled him, some maybe deer or small deer or something like this. But the goats, they were clever enough that they felt that something bad is going on, so they escaped to the town hall tower. And here legend goes in two ways. One, the simple way, it was just appreciated by people of Poznan. They were so clever and so funny, so they were saved, and to commemorate, they were just put in a mechanical form on the town hall tower. The second version of the legend adds some extra element to it, that from this town hall tower, they noticed a fire in the city, and they started to do their sound and warning the citizens of Poznan about the fire. So it added some extra things that they did for the city, and it gives even more reasons to commemorate in this funny mechanism that we have now.
Poznan Fact File. Direct flights from Tel Aviv are operated by Ryanair. The journey takes around 3.5 hours. Poznan Ławica Airport offers connections to major European hub airports such as Warsaw, Frankfurt, Munich, Copenhagen and Brussels. Regular flights also operate from London, Paris, Rome, Budapest and Krakow. You can get to the city centre from the airport by regular city bus lines 159 or at night 222. The journey takes about 20 minutes and the ticket costs around $1.36. You can buy the ticket from vending machines on board the bus. A taxi to the centre of Poznan takes about 15 to 25 minutes and costs approximately $11. By train, it's around 3 hours from Berlin or Warsaw. A very convenient way to explore and get around the city is the Poznan City Card, which includes free public transport, buses and trams day and night, as well as free or discounted entry to dozens of museums, attractions and restaurants. Recommended hotels include the luxury City Park Hotel and Residence, Hotel Kolegiaki, Andersia Hotel and Spa and the Hotel Mercure Poznan Centrum. If you're looking for something a bit more relaxed and casual, then the recommendations include Hotel Altus Poznan Old Town, Elon Boutique Limanowskiego, Novotel Malta Poznan and the place where we stayed, Don Prestige Residence. Recommended restaurants include Modra Cucina, which offers traditional Poznan and Polish dishes in a contemporary way, Tez Mozna, which is tasty, vegan and gluten-free, and Bravaria, a large restaurant with its own brewery. There's also Old Skulova, set up by Ukrainians fleeing the war with Russia. $100 will buy you some 443 Polish zloty as of March 2023. Poznan lies in a temperate or moderate climate zone. Summers from late April to September, however, can be hot, with temperatures even reaching 30 degrees Celsius or 86 Fahrenheit. The winter temperature is usually between -5 to 5 degrees Celsius, that's 23 to 41 degrees Fahrenheit. You're listening to the Jerusalem Post podcast travel edition with Mark Gordon and David Harris. Mark, on a Friday back in Israel, do you ever go to a bakery?
Well, I go to the supermarket, but I go to the bakery section.
So you buy challah.
I do.
Which is a platted bread.
Yes.
Which probably has its origins in Poland.
Yes.
Sometimes you buy a bagel.
Not from the supermarket. Israel has terrible bagels or bagels.
And you might buy a sort of rolled up croissant looking thing with chocolate in it called a
rogalach. Or I don't know, rogalach come plural. You buy a box of rogalach.
Rogalach, right. So I don't know what the singular is. But we're now outside a Rogalach museum, I guess. But I don't know how you pronounce it in Polish, but I know a man who does. Over to Wojciech. How do you pronounce that word?
Singular form is rogal. Plural would be rogale. And in Poznan we have very special type of rogal, which is sometimes translated into English as a croissant. Our rogal, named Świętomarciński or Saint Martin's croissant, is not quite the same thing as a French croissant, but it was just the nearest word that we could find. And our Saint Martin's croissant do not associate it too much with saint in Christian sense. Of course, Saint Martin was first a Roman soldier, they became a Christian saint, but it's all about idea of sharing with people what you like. So it's the story behind this rogal. We are quite proud of it. It can be produced only in Poznan and the surrounding area, and it's confirmed by the European Union itself. It's protected in whole Union as a regional, very special thing, and it's mostly celebrated on November 11th, St. Martin's Day, when we eat most of the rogals or croissants. However, nowadays you can have them every day, and you can visit St. Martin's Croissant Museum and experience and learn more about the history of Poznan and croissants itself.
Which is exactly what David and I have just done. I think 2 o'clock every day. There is an English language demonstration of how to make the St. Martin's croissant. And if you can't find the museum, there's a great big clue. You just follow the fattest pigeons that you have ever seen in the world. We're in the courtyard outside the museum. Those pigeons are struggling to get up and down the stairs because so many people have fed them a St. Martin's croissant.
So the performers, the chefs are a riot. It's extremely funny. It's a very interactive hour. It's well worth doing. And if you come at 2 o'clock, by 3 o'clock, just as they're wrapping up, it's across the road from the goats. So you get to see the goats butting heads from a different angle. Before we came in over lunch, we were talking about language, which is where we just started this little conversation. There's a lot of crossover, isn't there, between words that we use in Israel that you could say have a Yiddish origin and the Polish language.
Yes, they are, and people very often are not even aware of the original meaning and the roots of the word. Probably my personal favorite example would be циmes, the word that we use for something really special, a delicacy. Not always, but mostly connected with food, but you can even use it metaphorically as something really special, some work of art is циmes of art, you may say. So this is just one of the examples. Very often we talk about doing Geschäft, which is doing business, of course, and lots of examples which influence our Polish language, and probably both ways. You can find some examples in Hebrew, in Yiddish. We talked about bałagan, which has some complicated history with some Russian involved in it, but we share this word together.
For those of you who don't know, balagan means what did you described it very well, Mark?
It's essentially disorganization, mess.
Yes, in a nutshell we have the same. In Polish it's just mess. For example, a mother may tell his kid to do something with this bałagan in your room, so just clean up your mess. Yeah, it's the same.
Hi, this is David Harris from the Jerusalem Post podcast Travel Edition. Find us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at MarkDavidPod, or mail us at markdavidpod@gmail.com.
So having put down our croissant, although I'm still working my way through one, we've gone on a walk to start working off the 1,200 calories from the croissant. And we've come to Rabbi Akiva Agera Square. We walked down a street named Jewish Street in an area that was part of where the Jews lived. There was I think the best way to describe it is like a social housing, old people's project that's currently undergoing renovation on the corner. And then you come around the corner and see a very large but very poorly maintained building. David?
It does look neglected. All the way up at the top, painted on, is a Star of David. Down at the bottom there is a plaque which says on it, to the memory of the Poznan Jews murdered in the years 39 to 45 by the German occupiers. Underneath it says this building housed the synagogue, which was desecrated and turned into a swimming pool by the Germans during World War II. And above is still a sign saying that it was a swimming pool.
Let's ask our guide, Wojciech, are there any plans for this building going forward?
Difficult to tell, to be honest, at the very moment. The synagogue was built in 1907. It was opened this year. It's true, in 1940 it was desecrated by Nazis, by Germans, and turned into a swimming pool. It maintained its function until as late as 2011. Despite of the fact that in 2002 it was returned to Jewish community in Poznan. As far as I am concerned, it was sold. It was the decision of Jewish community to sell it. And there was rumors talking about hotel with some special design space to commemorate the history of a place. The current development plan says that it can be transformed into apartments. The future of old synagogue, but originally named new synagogue, is quite uncertain. However, I keep my fingers crossed to find the best solution and the best thing that can be here to just save it for the future. So it means we need to take care as a city, as a local community, to maintain the memory about this place. But some details are, to be very honest, unknown from the moment that Jewish community decided to sell it to some private investor.
You mentioned a Jewish community. If I'm here looking for a synagogue today, is there an active synagogue?
Yes, there is. There is a Jewish community, has their own very nice tenement house on Stavna Street, very nice looking, made of bricks, and you can contact them online or call them, and they have a prayer room or a synagogue in their tenement house. If you look closely, there is a sign of mezuzah near the door, of course. The proper mezuzah is inside, but even outside there is some symbolic wooden thing near the door, so you will probably notice it, and this is the place, this is the address that you are looking for.
What's the community like? I think if I remember rightly, when I was trying to climb up to see the goats, we were talking about it, and you said it reformed in 1999?
Yes, it's true. Poznan Jewish community was reformed in 1999. It's rather small, I think I can tell. Hard to estimate, but I believe around 40, maybe 50 people are involved regularly. However, I can tell that a few weeks ago we had a special occasion, first bat mitzvah organized since 1937 in Poznan. So it was a big thing for local Jewish community. Rabbi came from Berlin, especially for this event, so it was celebrated here in Poznan.
Walking about 10 minutes from the synagogue, past the city walls, we come to a familiar statue. We've seen the work of this sculptor before. We've seen the story of this sculpture. David?
You just said it before we turned on the microphone. Baby bottoms. And anybody who goes onto our social media, have you got it at the top of your Facebook page? I've got it at the top of mine, I think.
I think I replaced it with pictures of us in Uzbekistan, which you can hear all about on the Jerusalem Post Podcast Travel Edition.
So the sculptor is David Cherney, and he's done some pretty odd things all over the place. So actually, if you've been to Prague, there's the baby bottoms. He's got babies climbing up a TV tower as well there.
So what's the link between Poznan and the Czech Republic?
Well, you have to go back to one of your quiz questions on a previous episode, which was, where was the Maharal of Prague born? And if I remember rightly, there were two possible answers, but you're absolutely convinced that he was born in Poznan.
My reading of the great books of Wikipedia pinpoint the birthplace of the Maharal of Prague to Poznan.
Before we ask Wojciech to explain, do you want to describe what we're looking at? We haven't said the G word yet.
We are looking at a 7 foot, just over 2 meter tall statue, and it looks like one man from this angle. But as you slowly walk around it, it looks like numerous people stood next to each other, all almost slotted in, layer by layer.
I don't know what it's made from. We're going to ask the hard questions to Wojciech, and we'll see if he knows the answers or not. But imagine a whole series of metal strips about an inch high, formed into circles of different size, one layered on top of the other with a little gap of another inch or so in between, all the way down from the feet up to the head, and that's what we're looking at. And we've still not said the G word.
I don't know if you ever saw the Arnold Schwarzenegger version of Total Recall,
Yes.
when his fake disguise was falling apart and layer by layer it came to pieces. It's kind of like that this is one large person coming apart. And we're saying the G word because the person supposedly coming apart here is the Golem of Prague.
Yes, I can confirm it's Golem of Prague or maybe Golem of Poznan. And part of our Poznan Jewish connection, Poznan Czech connection, not the only one. Quite humble as for David Czerny work. A lot of people even say that it's too polite, as if some of you are aware of what David Czerny can do, how controversial he might get. So this one is very polite. And some people even say and laugh a bit because this sculpture, this piece was commissioned especially for Poznan, that it tells also a lot about Poznan as a very decent town when we know how to behave and avoid controversies. Maybe. However, this is our golem, one of the pieces of modern art that you can see in public spaces of Poznan. We are quite proud of it. We love this kind of different international, intercultural connections, and this is how it expresses in one of the streets of Poznan.
And if you want to see the real Golem, you need to head to the Alt Neulandschule in Prague, where apparently he's in the loft.
And you can trace the Golem and David Czerny and a variety of other things if you go back and listen to some of our previous episodes, because they're all places that we've visited and talked about on the podcast.
And if you want to read a really good book, I recommend The Golem and the Jinni by Helen Wecker. We've come to Poznan's Enigma Cipher Centre, and I'm already in love with the place because the first machine we see in the centre of the first floor lobby has my name on it. It says Gordon. We're with our guides Marcin and Maxim. Maxim, what is this machine?
From artistic point of view, we can see a model of Enigma rotors, the center, the heart of this cipher machine. It is the first step that we can try to make an encryption of message.
So looking at the machine, because it's in Polish, it still looks like it's in code to me and nothing has been solved. Ah, now we're in English. And the words maintain secrecy have come up on the border bar.
Marcin, I'm going to ask you a very unfair question. In 60 seconds, explain the story that you're trying to give over to the public in this centre.
We are telling a story about communication, about covering information during all the history of civilization and uncovering it. All the story is focused around the main event for us, breaking the Enigma code. But there are also some parts about even ancient ciphers and about modern way of keeping cybersecurity, for example.
Maxim, there's nothing new about encryption. It's been happening for hundreds, thousands of years. What was the point at which there was a huge change, a feeling that this was absolutely necessary, and we see this huge increase in encryption into the 20th century?
Beginnings of it is from 19th century, where telegraph spread out of the world and connect Europe with America, one continent to another continent, and sending remote messages from one country to another is the purpose, and it make a need to make new cryptology methods. One of the example was Enigma cipher machine. So it was very important to keep a secret to send a message between countries, between continents.
This is the machine called the bomb, the first cryptological bomb. The name was taken from a cookie that our cryptologists were eating in nearby coffee shop. It was made to find the possible configuration of Enigma daily cipher key. And the way to start the bomb was to find a specific pattern of letters in headline of encrypted German message. So the bomb is starting.
At the moment, I'm watching what look like, if you watch Doctor Who, mini Daleks with letters on them spinning round. And you can see different levels of each one of these rotors moving round to solve a code.
If anybody listening to this would like to visit or learn more, I assume you have a website. How can they find out more details?
Our website is csenigma.pl.
Hello, I am Anna Shamotua. I work here in the castle for almost a year now, but I know this place my entire life actually, because I do come from Poznan, and so is my family. That place seemed familiar for years, but only when I started here, I really started to get into what this place is. I mean, this is still a very difficult task for me to master, how to talk about the castle to different people, communicate all this complexity that we come across here in every corner.
Am I right in saying it's the youngest castle in Europe?
Yes, so they say, yes. It was built around 1910. It had been built for some time, but 1910 is the date when it was open, and it was built for the Kaiser, for the Emperor Wilhelm II, and that was the official ruler of Poznan during that time, because I need to remind that up to 1918 we were not Poland, and this part of Poland was actually a German site.
After the First World War, this became a Polish building for 20 years. Then what happened?
During the period between wars, it was a place that the University of Poznan has its own headquarters. It was also a place for a president of Poland for a very short time and other authorities. So this building was never really abandoned or closed. It was always in public service in some form. During the Second World War, it was the headquarters of the Nazis' army and administration.
As a young woman living in a modern country, in a modern city, but working in a building like this where you're dealing with a very complex history of invasions, of wars, of communism, how do you see your role as a young Polish citizen?
I think that question is more difficult than you might think, because as a person born in Poznan during communism, with this heritage, which is sometimes feels more like a burden than something to be proud of, I can't say that I really ever had a big problem with my identity, even though it's complex, because my family was always open and they never put any barriers. So I was raised in a family where we tolerated everyone.
It does feel like a very modern new castle. You're not seeing the old sandstone walls. Everything is inside. What is contained in the castle now?
Right now in the castle we have a culture center called Zamek, which is castle in English. And as a culture center, we organize about 2,000 events per year. So we present all the branches of art, really. We have cinema, we present theater, we present music program. We also have educational programs, both for historical education and sightseeing in the historical wing, and also we have citizen education, so it's a very modern thing, and this is the area where people gain new skills in terms of citizen society. We also have artistic education, so that's actually the third kind of education. We do big exhibitions such as Gaudi or Frida. Right now we're preparing a big cosmic exhibition. I can't wait for it. It's called Not This Sky, and this exhibition will be here open till the beginning of July, so it's 4 months as we speak right now. We're still before opening. And this is an exhibition gathering different discoveries in terms of cosmology, space discoveries, astronauts, all the things, little fragments sometimes, will be gathered here in the castle, and all the elements that has been discovered here in Poznan or the Great Poland. So we'll show, for instance, one of the oldest copies of Copernicus' Revolutionibus ad Orbium Celestium. I mean, the second part of the title was added by the editor, so Copernicus never meant for the book to be called that long. It was just Revolutionibus. So that's just one of the things. I'm not sharing more. You just need to come to Zamek and see it for yourself.
If anybody wants to know more, how can they find out?
Please visit our website, ckzamek.pl, which is ckzamek.pl. We also have English version of the website, so it's more approachable for anyone from outside of Poland. And obviously our social media, such as Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok.
Anna Shamotwa, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for visiting us.
David.
It's not that bad. Come on,
No.
we've been colder.
No, I'm all right with my woolly hat, my gloves, my very thick Canadian coat.
We were in minus a lot on the eastern side of Turkey. This is very pleasant.
I'm still on my feet here, whereas in Turkey I think I was really struggling.
Well, when we walked on a frozen lake, I think we spent a lot of our time on our bottoms.
Yeah, I left my gloves in the car for that one.
Oh dear.
Anyway, back to Poznan. We've come to Citadel Park, just outside the centre of Poznan.
It's a beautiful area. It was described by Wojciech as being the mountain of Poznan. There's one little hill in the middle. It's a beautiful flat park. There are lots of different areas here. We've just passed a military museum. There is a historic cemetery here, the second oldest cemetery in Poznan. And there are lots of sculptures all around the park.
And monuments. And we're now standing by a friendship monument between, I think at the time it was the Soviet Union and Poland.
Yes, it was. Now it isn't at all. After attack of Russia on Ukraine, it became some kind of a wall that people started expressing their, let's call it politely, feelings against Russia. Now it's clean. Now it's still here, just to help us to remember that history might be a bit complicated, let's say. However, Citadel Park is really the biggest park in Poznan, 100 hectares. Some people call it a Central Park of Poznan. We wonder if people in New York call Central Park a Citadel of New York. We don't know. But people love this place. It's mostly about relax and leisure and recreation. You can enjoy nature, you can enjoy some modern art, or you can just sit and enjoy your coffee, have a picnic, play some games. One of the most loved places in Poznan, once again with a bit complicated and rich history.
And squirrels.
Do you know the amount of times you say what's in my mind?
Well, that's why I'm silent most of the time.
I think that would be very nice. We're drawing close to the end of our time with you here in Poznan. A lot of what we've talked about, both when recording and just in our own conversations, has been the complicated history of this place and the various approaches to it. But there are also, as we've posted on social media, there are many younger people from the younger generations who are taking lessons learned and trying to build a new future for this city. Perhaps the last thing we should talk about is the sculpture that we passed and some of maybe the lessons that we can take out of it. A very bizarre sculpture with how many?
112.
112 very strange bodies.
Yes, indeed. It was designed for Citadel Park in the middle of it, which historically was one of the biggest battlefields of the Second World War. So these rusty figures, at least 2 meters high, headless, stick out from the ground, and they are brown, rusty. So this is like your memories that you maybe try to hide, but they are just going out of the ground. And this is the lesson that we are trying to learn, that we just need to remember and make our future hopefully better.
We've got one more stop in Wielkopolska, Greater Poland, but we're saying goodbye to Poznan in the next few minutes. I'd like to say a massive thank you to Wojciech for looking after us for the last 2 days. We've had a really fascinating time.
Not only the places that you've taken us to, but more importantly, the people that you've introduced us to, close friends, colleagues, who have shown that there are so many different ways to view a town. And listeners, the best way to find out is to come for yourselves.
A great pleasure to have you here in Poznan. Just to remind you, we have a direct flights from Tel Aviv, so it's quite convenient to get here. Airport is just 6 kilometers from the center, which is about 15 minutes by public bus. Why not? So just come over and experience it for yourself. Thank you for your visit, David, Mark. Great pleasure to have you here.
A pleasure. Let's go and get some croissant.
This is the Jerusalem Post podcast travel edition. We've left Poznan behind. We've travelled about 60 miles, 100 kilometres in an eastern direction to a place that probably most foreigners don't get to in Poland, which is the small town of Konin, population of about 70,000 people. It's partly industrial, it's got a small old town, it's surrounded by lakes, so a lot of Polish people will come here and spend time enjoying themselves at the lakeside. The Warta River also passes through this part of the world. But for Mark, it has a very different significance.
Yes, ever since I started coming to Poland and asking my family about where we came from, because I have at least 2 roots of my family that are Polish, the name that cropped up again and again and again was Konin. My father's mother, whose maiden name was Moskowicz and family name was Moskowicz, seemed to have come from Konin, and through a lot of research by my wife and reading an interesting book from Theo Richmond called Konin, we've seen the name Moskowicz again and again and looked through the records, and Konin is, we think, definitely the place where my grandmother was born.
With us is our host. You're going to have to say your name because I'm never going to manage both your first name and your last name. But with us is Jacek, and he's going to guide us through this town. So tell us your name, a little bit about yourself, and a bit about the older history of this city.
So the name is Jacek Cieślewicz, and I'm pretty aware that it's very difficult for foreigners to spell it properly. So right now, like you said, we are in Konin, which is in the eastern part of Wielkopolska region. The history of the town dates back to about the break of 12th or 13th century. For hundreds of years, it had a significant Jewish population. Let's say in 1939, just before World War II, Konin had 12,000 inhabitants, of which about 2,300 were Jewish. With large synagogue here and a Talmudic school and many industries run by Jewish people.
Okay, let's go and check it out.
We've finally come in from the cold in Konin. It was a bit nippy out there, and the rain, I think, got the better of us. But for me, I've had an emotional couple of hours walking round the old town of Konin. The city itself is completely transformed from what it would have been when my grandmother left in 1905, nearly 120 years ago. There was something special about walking round and walking those footsteps where she would have been.
Jacek, there's a lot more to Konin, which is only a small town, population of 70,000, but there's a lot more to it than it just being a place where Mark's grandmother lived.
The city is quite old. It's over 700 years right now of history. It has a tiny but picturesque old town. It's enough for a whole day of walking. Well, I think everybody should enjoy the cobblestone little streets and, just strolling around them and seeing all the monuments, the little but beautiful town hall, all the, the places of worship, including the Gothic churches, see the old Jewish district, which is an important part of the town's history. What is mostly important, Konin is not only about history, not only about the modern times, which are marked mostly by the industrial areas to the north, but it's a great hub for water sports, with having several lakes surrounding the city. Poland's longest waterway route, which is called the Great Waterway of Wielkopolska. It's a great place for outdoor activities. You can go paddle, you can rent a boat, a motorboat, a sailing boat. You can just have some nice time on the lakeside and have ice cream and just, relax.
And there are a lot of interesting facts we found out about Konin that I wouldn't have found while I was looking up about my family. Poland's largest church is probably out of that window. We're in the Marina Gaj restaurant on one of the lakes. Maybe it's the outline we can see, maybe not, but Poland's largest church is situated here if you want to go and visit it.
There's also the oldest milestone north of the Alps in the churchyard. It's a lovely place to visit. Most of this podcast is focused on Poznan. It is the largest city in your region. It's the place that gets all the attention. It's the one with the airport, etc., etc. But now you've got a minute, 2 minutes to sell the rest of your region, which is Greater Poland.
It's not only about visiting big cities when you travel to another country. I think if you're looking for the true spirit of a place, you should visit the small towns, see the locals, meet the people, see places where life is a bit slower than in the huge metropolis. And with great public transport here in the Wielkopolska region, you can travel to those smaller cities and towns in like 30-40 minutes and have some good experience. Also, what I always emphasize, it's a great opportunity to have something to eat, to drink something local. In Poznan you may have a lot of fancy Chinese or Indian restaurants, but to find something really, really regional, you have to step away from the big city. And that's the most interesting part of traveling.
When we were with one of your colleagues a little bit earlier in our visit in Poznan, and I suggested having those wonderful pierogi potato-filled pancakes, he pulled a face and he said, no, you don't want to do that here, you want to do that further east. How localized is the cuisine in this part of the country? What can people expect to eat if they go into a typical local eatery?
That's right. Pierogi are always associated with Polish cuisine, but not here in Western Poland. Well, I think the most iconic thing in our cuisine in this region are potatoes, eaten in all kind of flavors, all kind of styles. We have potato dumplings, potato pancakes, potato casserole, whatever you like in potatoes. It often comes with pork, which is a very important part of local cuisine. You also have regional cheeses. Regional cheese is absolutely awesome. And what can be a bit surprising for you, people always associate Poland with drinking vodka, which is not true anymore. Nowadays beer is much more popular, with a few dozens of local breweries brewing wonderful beer here in the region. It's developing very fast. In the last few years is winemaking, so you can even have regional wine. And it might be surprising for a lot of people that we have wine in Poland, but that's true. Well, it's perhaps it's associated somehow with the climate change, but if there is a chance to grow wine and have it here in Poland, why not to try it?
If people want to find out more about the Wielkopolska region, how do they do that? Is there a website?
Of course there is. Simply type wielkopolska.travel. And you will find the website. Of course, it comes in English version as well.
How do you spell Wielkopolska?
It's Wielkopolska.
Jacek, thank you very much.
Thank you too. I hope you enjoyed your visit, and for all the listeners, hope to see you soon here in Wielkopolska region.
Well, that's it, mate.
Another one.
We're done. Well, we're not really done. We're in a very nice Mercedes minibus.
Heading across Poland to our next destination, which you'll find out all about in an upcoming podcast. But for now, we've finished our trip to Poznan and the Greater Poland region. I can't say the name, you can.
A big thank you to the Wielkopolska Tourism Organisation.
He's good, isn't he? And the same goes for the good folks who promote travel in Poznan.
And last but not least, Auntie Dorota at the Polish Tourism
I
Organisation.
can't believe you called her Auntie Dorota. That was him, not me, Dorota. Punish him, not me. The truth is, Dorota's been fantastic. She's looked after all of our needs on this trip and previous trips, and it has been an absolute pleasure to work with everybody associated with tourism in Poland.
Quiz question, David. Which river runs through Poznan?
Well, I know.
Why don't you give the answer then? That's how a quiz works. I ask a question, you give the answer if you know it.
We did. Do you know what? In our earlier podcast, we didn't do that. The person who asked it answered it. The Varta, yes?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
That's
now
all right.
what? You've got a little story to tell, don't you, about your special trip, to the place where your family comes from. Deeply emotional trip, but you want to say this.
Yes, we need to end it on a high note. The most important thing we found out about Konin is that the inventor of the condom came from there.
His name?
Joseph Fromm.
And from Joseph from Mark, and from David, from Poznan, and from Greater Poland.
Dziękuję.
Goodbye.